The boot came down hard, not an accident, not a stumble. A choice made in front of a full room in broad daylight by a man who had never once been told no by anyone who mattered. The wheelchair jerked sideways. Coffee sloshed. A woman grabbed the table edge and said nothing. And the room, every single person in it, looked away. That's the thing about a town where one family owns the courthouse, the planning commission, and half the street you live on. People learn to look away. They learn it young. They practice it long. After a while, it doesn't even feel like a choice anymore. But at the counter, a man in a flannel jacket sets down his coffee cup, slowly. He doesn't raise his voice, doesn't reach for anything. Just stands up and turns around with the particular stillness of someone who has spent 22 years making decisions that couldn't be undone. And for the first time in a long time, somebody in Harlan Falls stops looking away. What happens next will take 3 weeks, one buried police report, and a woman who has been silent for 7 years. This is that story. There's a certain kind of town that the rest of the country forgot about. Not on purpose, maybe. Just forgot. Harlan Falls, Kentucky sits in the kind of valley where the morning fog takes its time leaving, where the mountains close in on 3 sides and the 4th side opens up to a 2-lane highway that doesn't go anywhere important. The old money left decades ago. The young people followed not long after. What stayed was everything else. Church on Birch Street still rings its bell at 8 every Sunday morning. The hardware store still has a hand-painted sign that hasn't changed since 1987. The barbershop still has the same 3 chairs, and on slow afternoons, the barber and his 2 regulars argue about college football like it personally affects their lives. And on the corner of Main and Harrison, there's a diner called Marvella's. It's been there 31 years. Coffee is strong and the pie is real, and if you sit in the same spot long enough, Marvella Hobbs will bring you what you always order without you having to say a word. That's the thing about a town like Harlan Falls. People know each other, but knowing someone's name and knowing someone's story, those are 2 very different things. Wade Callum had lived on Harrison Street for 4 years, and most people in Harlan Falls knew 2 things about him. 1, he ran the garage on the south end of Harrison. Callum's Auto. 1 bay, 1 lift, 1 man, but if your truck was making a noise it shouldn't be making, or your brakes were doing something your brakes had no business doing, you brought it to Wade. He didn't overcharge. He didn't make up problems that didn't exist. He told you what was wrong, told you what it would cost, and then he fixed it right the first time, in a town where trust is the only currency that actually holds its value. That meant something. 2, he kept to himself. Not in a rude way, not in a cold way, just in the way of a man who had lived enough life that he didn't need to fill every silence with noise. He had coffee at Marvella's every weekday morning. Black, no sugar. He read the paper, the actual paper, not his phone. He said good morning to people who said good morning to him. And then he went to work. What most people in Harlan Falls did not know about Wade Callum was the rest of it. They didn't know about the 22 years. They didn't know about the places he'd been sent to, things he'd been asked to do. The particular kind of silence a man carries home with him after 2 decades of that life. They didn't know his wife's name was Lynette, that she had red hair and a laugh that was too loud for the rooms she was in, and that she thought that was funny rather than embarrassing. That she died in the spring of 2019, 41 years old, from a cancer that moved so fast it felt less like an illness and more like an ambush. They didn't know he had a son named Derek, that Derek had just turned 19, just started his first semester at the University of Kentucky in Lexington, and that the house on Harrison Street was very quiet now in a way it had never been quiet before. Wade Callum was 47 years old, spent more than half his life being responsible for other people, teams, missions, his wife, his son. Now it was just him and the garage and the coffee at Marvella's every morning, and that, he had decided, was enough. That was fine. That was what the next chapter looked like. He believed that most days, he almost believed it, Noelle Garrett had lived on Harrison Street for 7 years. She had moved there at 28. Young, newly married, just starting to build a life that felt like it was going in the right direction. She doesn't talk about the accident much. It happened on a Tuesday night in October of 2017. She was driving home from her sister's house. The road was wet. The other driver ran a red light at 52 miles per hour. The doctors at Harlan County General told her what had happened to her spine. They used words she had to look up later. What it meant, in plain language, was this: she would not walk again. She was 28 years old when they told her that her husband, Marcus, stayed for a year. He tried. She believed then and still believes now that he genuinely tried. There is a particular kind of pressure that comes from watching someone you love rebuild their entire life from the ground up. Every room, every routine, every small thing they used to do without thinking now requiring planning, adjustment, effort. Marcus was not a bad man. He just turned out to be someone who needed a life that kept moving forward. And Noel for a while was someone who needed to stop and figure out how to move at all. He left in the fall of 2018. He said the right things when he left. He was kind about it, that almost made it worse. What Noel had now, at 35, was smaller than what she'd imagined at 22. But it was hers. The house on Harrison Street had been modified carefully over the years. Wider doorways, a ramp at the front and back. A bathroom she'd redesigned herself, researching every detail online over 3 long weeks until she found exactly what she needed. She worked part-time as a bookkeeper for Harlan Falls Community Church. She had started a small online shop selling hand-knitted goods, scarves, blankets, small decorative pieces. It didn't make her rich. It made her independent. That distinction mattered more to her than most people would understand. She had her routine. Her mornings started early. Coffee at her kitchen table facing the window that looked out onto Harrison Street. Work from 8 until noon. Knitting in the afternoons. Marvella's on Mondays and Thursdays, because the pie was good and because Marvella Hobbs was one of the few people in Harlan Falls who talked to Noel like she was just a person. Not like she was fragile. Not like she was inspiring. Not like she was something to be pitied or praised. Just a person. That was rarer than it should have been. Most people in Harlan Falls were kind to Noel Garrett. They held doors. They smiled. Some of them brought casseroles when the weather turned cold. But there is a specific kind of loneliness that lives inside kindness given out of discomfort. When people are good to you because they don't know what else to be. When you can feel, behind every interaction, the faint hum of their relief when they get to move on. Noel had lived inside that loneliness for 7 years. She had learned to fill it with work and routine and the specific satisfaction of making something beautiful with her hands. She had learned not to need more than that. That too, she almost believed. The Monday that changed things started like every other Monday. Wade was at the garage by 6:30. He worked for an hour on 09 Ford F-150 with a transmission that had been slipping since August. At 7:15, he wiped his hands on a shop rag, pulled on his jacket, and walked the half block to Marvella's. The morning was cold, late October cold, the kind that gets into your joints before you're fully awake. The bell above the diner door rang when he pushed it open. Marvella was already behind the counter. She was 71 years old and had not once, in the 4 years Wade had been coming here, looked like she was having a bad morning. She had the constitution of someone who had simply decided long ago that mornings were worth getting up for. The usual, she said. Not a question. The usual, he confirmed. He took his regular stool at the counter, pulled out the paper. The diner was maybe 2/3 full. The Hendersons from the hardware store in the far booth. 3 guys from the county road crew at the middle tables. The retired school teacher, Mr. Abbott, reading something thick in the corner. And Noel Garrett. At the table near the side wall, Wade had seen her before, of course. They lived on the same street. He'd nodded to her when she passed the garage. She'd nodded back. They had never had a conversation. She was sitting with a cup of coffee and a knitting project in her lap. Something small and red, moving through her fingers with the ease of long practice. There was something steady about the way she sat. Grounded. He went back to his paper. The 3 men came in at 7:40. Wade heard the door and didn't look up right away. He heard the volume before he saw them. Not shouting, just louder than the room called for. The kind of loud that announces itself. He looked up. 3 men, mid to late 20s. Not from Harlan Falls. He knew that immediately. Their clothes were too new, their boots too clean. They had the particular ease of people who move through the world expecting it to arrange itself around them. Wade recognized the type. He had spent 22 years operating alongside men in positions of authority. He knew the difference between confidence earned and confidence assumed. These men had not earned anything. They scanned the diner. One of them, the tallest, with a jaw like a fence post, pointed at Noel's table there. That one they walked over. The tall one stood at the edge of Noel's table and looked down at her. "We need this spot." Noel looked up from her knitting. She was calm. Practiced at this, Wade realized. "I'm sorry," she said. "I need the side space for the chair. The other tables are a little... There's room at the counter." She glanced at the counter. No clearance for a wheelchair, no footrest, and low enough. She would know that. He would know that she knew. That was the point. I don't think the counter really works for lady. The tall one's voice dropped. Not quieter, harder. We're not asking. The diner went quiet. Wade had set down his paper. He was watching now. The whole room was watching, and no one was moving. Marvella had gone very still behind the counter. The tall one looked at Noel's wheelchair. And then, not in a rage, not dramatically, but with the flat casual cruelty of someone who knew they could, he drew back his foot and kicked the right rear wheel hard. Chair jerked to the left. Noel grabbed the table edge. Her coffee tipped but didn't fall. The wheel was wrong now. Anyone could see it. Bent axle. It would not roll straight. Noel looked at it. Her face did not collapse. She did not cry. She just looked at the wheel the way a person looks at something when they are calculating, very quietly, how much more they can absorb. That look. Wade had seen that look before. Not on her. On people who had been absorbing things for so long that the absorption had become automatic. Who had learned that showing the weight of it only made other people uncomfortable. Who had learned to carry it invisibly. He stood up. He didn't rush. He didn't raise his voice. He walked over to the table and stood between the three men and Noel, not looming, not performing. Just present. The tall one looked at him, looked him up and down. Flannel jacket, work boots, grease still on his knuckles, made a calculation. Mind your business, I am, Wade said. His voice was level, not aggressive, not pleading, just steady in the way of a man who had made decisions under conditions these three men would not survive, and who was therefore not particularly impressed by men who kicked wheelchairs. This is my town, he said. That's my neighbor, he paused, and I'm asking you, once and politely, to find another table. The tall one held his gaze. 5 seconds. 6. Something shifted. It wasn't that Wade was bigger. He wasn't, especially. It wasn't that he made a threat. He hadn't. It was something in the quality of his stillness. The absolute absence of bluff. The tall one looked at his companions. Some unspoken calculation passed between them, and they moved. Not gracefully. But they moved to a table on the far side of the diner without another word. The sound came back into the room. The road crew exhaled. Marvella moved. Mr. Abbott turned a page. Wade turned to Noel. She was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Not gratitude exactly. More like assessment, like she was trying to figure out what he was. Let me look at the wheel, he said. He pushed the wheelchair back to the garage himself. Noel walked beside him. Or rather, Marvella lent her a chair from behind the counter, one of the old wooden ones, and Noel sat in that while Wade rolled the damaged chair the half-block down Harrison Street. It was an odd procession. A man in a work jacket pushing an empty wheelchair down a quiet Kentucky street on a cold Monday morning, Noel watching from Marvella's window with a cup of coffee that Marvella had warmed up without being asked. The garage smelled like oil and metal and the particular warmth of a space that has been worked in for years. Wade brought the chair inside under the light. He crouched down and examined the rear axle. The kick had done more damage than it looked like from across the room. The axle housing was bent, not broken, but torqued at an angle that would cause the wheel to track sideways. Over time, on any slope, it would pull hard to the right. A fall risk. Worse on wet pavement. He went to his parts shelf. He had worked on wheelchairs before. Not professionally, but twice in the past 2 years, once for old Harlan Dale, the veteran over on Poplar Street, when his chair had broken down and the medical supply company had quoted him a 3-week wait. Once for a woman at the church whose chair had developed a squeak that drove her husband to distraction, small repairs. But he'd learned what he needed to know. Found the right axle rod, a compatible bearing set, the correct socket size. He laid his tools out on the workbench, and then he got to work. This is the part that doesn't translate well into words. What Wade Callum did for the next 40 minutes was not dramatic. He did not do it with grand gestures. He did not narrate it. He just worked. He removed the damaged components carefully. He checked the frame alignment. It was true, no damage there. He fitted the new axle rod, pressed in the bearings, torqued everything to spec. He tested the wheel rotation by hand. He pumped up the tire. It had lost pressure in the impact. He checked the other 3 wheels while he was at it, found minor wear on the left front caster, replaced it. 15 extra minutes. He didn't mention it. Then he stood up, rolled the chair forward and back across the garage floor. Straight and smooth, he rolled it outside onto the pavement, tested it on the slight slope of the driveway. No pull. He brought it back in. He wiped it down. Not because it was dirty, but because it was her chair. Because some part of him, operating on instincts that had not gone anywhere, understood that a person's chair is an extension of their body. You treat it with care. Then he walked back to Marvella's to get Noel. When she came out and saw her chair waiting at the garage entrance, she was quiet for a moment. She transferred from the borrowed wooden chair to her own, with the practiced efficiency of someone who has performed the motion thousands of times. She settled in, rolled forward a few feet, rolled back. She could feel the difference. He could see it in her face, the slight release of something she hadn't even known she was holding. She settled in, rolled forward a few feet, rolled back. He could see it in her posture, the small release of tension across her shoulders, the way her hands rested easier on the push rims. She had been fighting that chair all morning. Now she wasn't fighting it. That was enough. She had been fighting that pull since 7:40 this morning. Now she wasn't. She looked up at him. "How much do I owe you?" "Nothing, Wade. Nothing," he said again, not unkindly, just settled. She looked at him for a moment. "That was the axle," she said. Not a question. She knew her chair, axle and a front caster. You replaced the caster? It needed it. She absorbed that, the fact that he'd noticed, that he'd fixed what he found rather than just what he was asked to fix. There was a long pause. The street was quiet. Crow called from somewhere in the maple trees. "Thank you," she said. It was simple, no performance. 2 words from a woman who meant them. He nodded. "Come back to Marvella's. Your coffee's still warm." Sat across from each other at the corner table, the one with extra space. Marvella had rearranged it slightly while they were gone. She didn't say anything about it. She just set down 2 cups. Neither Wade nor Noelle commented on the rearrangement. Outside, the October sun had finally burned through the morning fog. It came through the window at a low angle and landed on the table between them. They talked, not deeply at first. The way people talk when they're both a little wary, both a little curious, both trying to take the other person's measure without being obvious about it. Noelle asked how long he'd had the garage. 4 years, he said. She said she'd seen him there. He said he'd seen her pass. "We've been on the same street 4 years, she said. Not accusatory, just observing. "This is the first time we've actually talked." "It is," he agreed. "That's a Harlan Falls thing, I guess," she said. "You can know someone for years here without knowing them. Seems like everywhere," he said. She considered that. Maybe. Marvella came by with the pie plate, not asking, just presenting. Apple because it was Monday, and apple was what Marvella made on Mondays. She put 2 slices down without a word and moved away. Noelle smiled. "She does that. Every time," Wade said. "Have you ever tried to refuse?" "Once. What happened?" "She brought it back 10 minutes later and said I looked like I needed it." Noelle laughed. It was a real laugh, sudden, unguarded, the kind that arrives before the person decides whether to allow it. Wade noticed it the way you notice when a light comes on in a window. She told him about the bookkeeping job, about the online shop, about the patterns she designed herself. She didn't use patterns from books, she invented her own. He asked how she'd learned. "My grandmother," she said. "She used to say that knitting was the one thing that required you to focus entirely on what was in front of you." She paused. She meant it as a compliment. To knitting, another pause. "I've always thought it was also just a good life principle." He thought about that. "What are you making now?" She held up the small red project she'd been working on when the men came in. A cardinal. She turned it in her hands. Just a small decorative one. For the shop, he looked at the careful shape of it forming in the red yarn, the curve of the wing. He thought about Lynette briefly, the way she used to stop in parking lots to point out cardinals on fences, every time. Never got tired of it. He didn't say any of that. "It's good work," he said. "Thank you." They talked for another 20 minutes. About the town, about the changes they'd both noticed, about the shop on the corner that had been empty for 2 years, about the way the old movie theater building just sat there with plywood on the windows. "Harlan Falls used to have 1,200 people," Noelle said. "Now it's under 800, I know. You came back anyway." He looked at her. "Came back? You said you'd been here 4 years. But you said my town in there." She tilted her head toward the spot where the 3 men had been. "That's not someone who just moved to a town." He was quiet for a moment. "I grew up about 30 miles east of here," he said. "Came back when I was done." He left the done unspecified. She didn't ask what it was done with. "What made you choose this town over where you grew up?" He thought about it honestly. "It was smaller," he said. "Quieter. Enough people to not feel alone. Not so many that you have to explain yourself all the time." She nodded slowly. "That's exactly why I moved here," she said. The 2 of them sat with that for a moment. 2 people who had both chosen the same small place for the same quiet reason, neither quite knowing what to do with the coincidence. Wade was back under the Ford F-150 at 11:15 when he heard the car pull in. He didn't hear a truck, he heard a car, a good one. The particular quiet of a well-engineered engine, the way a car sounds when it costs more than most people in Harlan Falls make in 2 years. He rolled out from under the truck, stood up. The car was a dark gray Cadillac Escalade, 3 years old, immaculate. The man who stepped out of it was about 50, medium height, hair gone silver at the temples in a way that looked intentional. His coat was camel-colored wool. His handshake, which he offered immediately, was firm and practiced. "Bryce Caulfield," the man said. "Heard good things about this place." Wade looked at the car. No mechanical issues visible. He wiped his hands on his shop rag. Caulfield smiled. It was a good smile, the kind developed over years of needing people to feel at ease. "Actually," he said, "I wanted to talk to you." He looked around the garage, the bay, the lift, the tools. "About the property." Wade waited. "I've been doing some development work around Harrison Street," Caulfield said. "Bought up several of the lots. I'm working on a mixed-use commercial project. Something that would bring real investment into this part of town. Jobs. Tax revenue. Something that could genuinely turn things around here." He paused. "I'd like to make you an offer on this property." He named a number. It was high, significantly above what the garage and the lot were worth by any conventional measure. Wade knew what the conventional measure was. He had looked it up when he bought the place, and he checked occasionally, the way a careful person does. The number Caulfield named was almost double it. Wade looked at him. "I'm not selling." Caulfield's smile stayed exactly where it was. "I understand the hesitation." "No hesitation," Wade said. "I like my garage. I like my street. I'm not selling." Caulfield absorbed this. "I hear that," he said. "I do. And I'm not here to pressure anyone. That's not how I operate. I just want people to know the opportunity exists." He reached into his coat pocket and produced a business card. "Set it on the workbench. Case you change your mind." He looked around the garage one more time. Then he looked at Wade, and something passed through his eyes. Brief, flat, quickly recovered. "I heard about the incident at the diner this morning," he said. He said it casually, like a man mentioning weather. "Those boys can get rowdy sometimes. I apologize if they caused any inconvenience." He said "those boys" the way a man says it when he knows exactly who they are. Wade looked at him. "They work for you," Wade said. "Not a question." Caulfield tilted his head. "I wouldn't say work for me exactly. They know who you are." A pause. "One beat too long. Most people in this county know who I am," Caulfield said pleasantly. He buttoned his coat. "Good talking to you, Wade. Think about that number." He got back in the Escalade, pulled out of the garage lot smoothly, turned south on Harrison. Wade watched it go. Then he picked up the business card, looked at it, set it back down, went back under the truck. He lay there in the quiet of the garage and thought about the way Caulfield had said "those boys," like he was doing them a favor by not knowing them too well, like the distance was something he'd arranged on purpose. Wade had met that kind of man before, in uniform and out of it. The kind who needed other people's hands for the things he'd decided needed doing. He lay under the truck and he thought about Noelle Garrett sitting in her corner table, about the wheel that had been straight and then wasn't, about the look on her face when she was calculating how much more she could absorb. He didn't think about it for long. He got back to work. Denton Parrish came by at 4:15. He came in his personal truck, not the cruiser. That meant it wasn't an official visit. That meant it was the other kind. Denton was 54, built like a man who had once been very fit and had since arrived at a kind of durable solidity. He had known Wade since Wade moved back. They had gotten to the kind of friendship that didn't require much maintenance, occasional coffee, shared comfort of two men who didn't need to explain themselves. He sat on the bench along the wall. Wade kept working. That was how they did it. "Caulfield came to see you," Denton said. "He did. What'd he offer?" Wade named the number. Denton let out a slow breath. "That's a serious offer. I'm not selling. I know you're not." Denton was quiet for a moment. "Wade, there's something you should know." Wade set down the wrench, turned and looked at him. Denton had the face of a man delivering something he'd been carrying for a while. "He's already bought most of Harrison," he said. 6 lots in the past 14 months. The hardware supply building, the old Tanner property. 3 residential lots." He paused. "There's a rezoning hearing in 6 weeks. Harlan County Planning Commission. If it goes through, Harrison Street between Birch and Mill gets reclassified as commercial development zone, which means the remaining residential properties get pushed out," Wade said. "The city would make offers. They'd be fair by legal definition, but they'd be timed. 60 days to accept or start litigation." Wade looked at the floor. "Who else hasn't sold?" "Old Hector Briggs. Marvella's building, though her lease complicates it. And Noelle Garrett." Wade looked up. "Caulfield's already approached her," Denton said. 3 months ago. She said no." Wade thought about this. About Caulfield saying "those boys" this morning. about the timing. Monday morning. Noelle's regular day at the diner. Those men this morning, Wade said. The ones who kicked her chair. Denton met his eyes. I can't prove they're connected to Caulfield, but they drove a truck registered to a property management company out of Lexington. That company has done site prep work for Caulfield's last 2 developments. The garage was very quiet. Outside, the light was getting low. That specific late afternoon October light that comes in amber and makes everything look older than it is. Wade stood at his workbench and thought about a woman who had survived an accident that took her legs, who had survived a husband leaving, who had spent 7 years building a life inside a small house on a small street, who sat in her corner every Monday and Thursday and made beautiful things with her hands, who had looked at her broken wheel this morning with the face of someone calculating how much more she could absorb. She know about the rezoning, he said. She knows he wants to buy. She may not know how close the hearing is, or how far along he is. Another silence. Wade picked up the wrench again. I'll talk to her, he said. Denton nodded. He seemed relieved, actually. The way a person feels when they've put something down that was getting heavy. There's one more thing, Denton said. He said it carefully. The Caulfields, Bryce and his brother, the mayor. Their cousin. I don't know if you've heard anything about this. Tell me. 7 years ago, October. Accident on Route 9, drunk driver, wet road, female victim, significant injuries. He stopped. Wade waited. The driver's name was Carter Caulfield, Bryce's first cousin. The investigation, the original incident report. Denton stopped again. Then, I'm still trying to find some things out. But there are records from that case that I've been looking for, that I know should exist, that I cannot find where they should be. He stood up, pulled his jacket on. Like I said, I'm still working on it. He walked to the door. Turned back once. She's a good woman, Wade. She's been dealing with more than most people know about. Then he left. Wade stood alone in the garage. The F-150 was done. He should call the owner. He should close up. Instead, he stood very still at his workbench. He thought about Carter Caulfield. Route 9, October 2017. He thought about Noelle Garrett. Moving to this street at 28, newly married. Just starting to build a life. The math was not complicated. Stood there for a long time. Outside, the amber light turned gray, and then dark. Up the street, the light in the house with the ramp at the front door came on. He watched it for a moment, then he locked up the garage. And in the morning, he would go to Marvella's. She would be there, and they would talk. He didn't sleep well. That wasn't unusual. Wade Callum had not been a reliable sleeper since his mid-30s. Too many years of being trained to come awake fast and fully. The body learns what you teach it. Sometimes it doesn't unlearn. But this was different. This wasn't the old restlessness. This was something specific turning over in his mind. Route 9, October 2017, Carter Caulfield. He got up at 5:30, made coffee, stood at his kitchen window and watched Harrison Street in the dark, the house with the ramp, dark and quiet. He thought about what Denton had said. Records I know should exist, that I cannot find where they should be. He thought about Caulfield in his camel coat. Those boys can get rowdy sometimes. He thought about Noelle's face. The wheel, calculation behind her eyes. At 7, he walked to Marvella's, had his coffee. Read his paper without reading it. At 8:15, he walked back up Harrison Street, stopped at the house with the ramp, knocked on the door. She answered in less than a minute. She was already dressed and working, a laptop open on the table behind her, coffee steaming, papers spread out with the orderly precision of someone who began their day with intention. She looked at him. Not surprised exactly. More like she had half expected something and wasn't sure yet what it was. Wade, morning, he said. I have some information you should probably have. About the rezoning. About Caulfield. A beat. Come in, she said. Her house was small and exactly right. That was the only way to describe it. Not decorated to impress. Arranged to function and to feel like home bookshelves along the main wall. Paperbacks mostly, some hardcovers, a few knitting reference books. A work table near the window with yarn in deep organized colors, photographs on the shelf. A woman who might be her mother, a younger version of Noelle standing at the edge of what looked like the Appalachian Trail. Grinning in hiking boots. He noticed the hiking boots photograph and didn't say anything about it. She brought him coffee without asking. They sat at the kitchen table. The papers she'd been working on, church budget documents he could see, she set to one side. He told her what Denton had told him. The 6 properties. The rezoning hearing in 6 weeks, the planning commission. The timeline, he told it plainly, no editorializing. Just the facts, in order. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, there was a silence. She looked at her cup. I knew he wanted the street, she said. I didn't know the hearing was that close, 6 weeks, and if it passes, 60 days to accept an offer or begin litigation. She was quiet. Litigation costs money, she said. Yes. Another silence. Outside, a car passed on Harrison Street. Then quiet again. He came to my door in July, she said. Very polite, very reasonable. He talked about the town needing investment, about how the street wasn't what it used to be. About his development bringing jobs. She paused. He made the offer sound like he was doing me a favor. It's how he operates, Wade said. I said no. She said it simply. This is my house. I modified it myself. Every door, every ramp, every fixture. I know where everything is. I know how everything works. Starting over in a new place, she stopped. Started again. It's not just inconvenient. It's months of work. It's money I don't have. It's relearning a space from the beginning. She looked at him directly. He knows that. That's why he came to me first. He thought I'd be the easiest. Wade looked at her. There was no self-pity in how she said it. Just clear, accurate assessment. After I said no, she continued, things started happening. The plumber I've used for 3 years suddenly couldn't fit me in. The electrician said he was booked through spring. The heating company, same thing, all at once. Over about 6 weeks. You think he made calls. I think someone did. She said it evenly. But underneath it, underneath the evenness, was something that had been sitting there for months. Particular exhaustion of a person who has been managing a threat they couldn't prove and couldn't name. Wade looked at his hands on the table. I'm going to help, he said. She looked at him. Wade, I know what you're going to say. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. He said it the same way he'd said it yesterday about the caster settled. Done. That's not the point. She was quiet for a moment, then carefully, why? He thought about the honest answer. Because I've spent a lot of years watching the wrong people have all the power, he said. And the way I've always slept at night was knowing I didn't stand aside when it mattered. He paused. And because you've been carrying this alone for a while, you shouldn't have to. She looked at him for a long time. Something in her face moved. Not dramatically, just a small shift, like a door opening an inch. Okay, she said. The week that followed was made of small things. That's how it works, really. Not grand gestures, not dramatic declarations. Just the accumulation of small things done consistently. Wade came by on Wednesday evening. Step, Noel's ramp, had developed a soft spot. He'd noticed it Monday when he walked up. He brought lumber and tools. Fixed it in 40 minutes. I had the materials, he said when she came to the door. Saw it when I was here Tuesday. She looked at the new board, pressed her handwheel over it. Solid. You were going to fall through that in another month, he said. I know, she said. I've been meaning to. It's done now. She invited him in for coffee. He said yes. They talked for an hour about nothing urgent, about the town, about a book she'd been reading, a history of Kentucky that she'd found at the church rummage sale, about the '09 F-150 he'd been working on, and the specific personality of transmission problems. She laughed at his description of transmissions having personalities. He meant it seriously, actually. But he let her laugh. Thursday, she came to Marvella's, her regular day. He was already at the counter. She rolled past and took her corner table. Marvella brought her coffee. Halfway through, Wade moved from the counter to her table. He didn't ask. She didn't seem surprised. Marvella watched this from behind the counter with the expression of a woman who had seen many things unfold in her diner over 31 years and knew better than to comment on any of them. They split the apple pie. Talked for 90 minutes. Marvella refilled their cups 3 times. Friday evening, Noelle brought something to the garage. She appeared at the open bay door at 5:50. Holding a small paper bag. What's this? He said. You fixed my chair and my step and you keep paying for coffee, she said. So inside the bag, 2 slices of pound cake wrapped in foil. I made it this morning. I always make too much. He looked at the bag. Then at her. Thank you, he said. Don't read too much into pound cake, she said. But she was smiling. He ate 1 slice that night after dinner. It was very good. He thought about telling her so. Then thought he probably didn't need to. She knew. On Saturday afternoon they walked. She rolled. He walked. Along the creek path behind the street. It was one of the few accessible paths in Harlan Falls. Someone had paved it with county money in 2019, and Noelle had been using it ever since. The leaves were at peak color, deep red and gold against the gray of the creek rocks. The air had that cold clarity of late October in the Kentucky mountains. They didn't talk about Caulfield. They didn't talk about the rezoning. He told her about Derek, his son. U of K, first semester, studying civil engineering. Does he call? She asked. Sundays, Wade said. He sets an alarm for it, she smiled. That's a good kid he is, Wade said. Simple. The quiet pride of a man who had tried to do one thing right. His mother would be. He stopped. What was her name? Noelle asked. He looked at her. She asked it directly without apology, not tiptoeing around it. He appreciated that. Lynette, he said, tell me about her, and he did, not about the cancer, not about the end. He told her about the person, about how Lynette could not walk past a cardinal without stopping every time. Parking lots, roadsides, backyard fences. She would just stop and look, he said. She'd find them in the most unlikely places and just glow. About how she made coffee that was technically terrible, too weak, wrong temperature, but she made it with such complete confidence that he had never said so. He had drunk 9 years of bad coffee without complaint. About how she laughed. Too loud for rooms, never cared. Noelle listened the whole time. She didn't interrupt, didn't rush toward comfort, just listened. When he finished, she said, she sounds like someone who knew how to be alive. He thought about that. Yeah, he said. She did. Sat on the bench at the creek bend, the one the county had put in for the accessible path. The water moved past them. Slow and clear. What about you? He said. She was quiet for a moment. Watching the creek. What about me? You said you were married. Before, she said it without bitterness, without warmth either. The neutral way you say the name of something that used to be part of your life. He left a year after the accident, she said. I told you, I know. I mean, who was he? Before, she thought about it. Optimistic, she said. He was genuinely optimistic. He believed things would work out. He always had, and I think... She paused. I think what happened to me was the first thing in his life that he couldn't make work out by believing hard enough. She looked at the water. I don't hate him for it. I stopped hating him about 2 years after he left. What I felt instead was, she thought carefully, lonely in a new way. Because before I had been lonely with him there, and after I was lonely without him. But at least the second kind was honest. Wade looked at her. She turned and caught him looking. That's more than I usually say about it, she said. You don't have to. I know, she said. I wanted to. Sunday evening, Wade had talked to Derek that afternoon. His son was doing well, had a group project in his engineering class, had discovered the dining hall made decent chili on Tuesdays. Normal things. Good things. After the call, Wade walked up to Noelle's. She had her front light on. He could see it from his kitchen window, the way he'd been seeing it every evening. He knocked. She was in the middle of her red cardinal. It was nearly finished, the shape of the body clear now, the wings taking form. She set it down, let him in. They sat at the kitchen table again. He had brought a bag from the diner. Marvella had pressed sandwiches on him when he stopped for coffee that morning, claiming she'd made too many. They both understood Marvella had done no such thing. They ate. It was easy between them now. 4 days of small things had made it easy. He wasn't sure how they got there. The conversation moved the way conversations do, sideways and forward at the same time. She was talking about the house, about what she'd changed when she moved in, about the bathroom redesign that had taken her 3 weeks of research. I had no idea, she said. How much I didn't know about accessible design until I needed it. You don't think about it. Until you have to. Most people don't, he said. No, they don't, she was quiet. And then when you do, when you're the one who needs it, you realize how much of the world is built for one kind of body. And how little thought has gone into everyone else. She looked at her hands on the table. The hardest part wasn't the physical things, she said. The ramps, the modifications. I figured those out. I'm practical. I can solve practical problems. What was the hardest part, he said. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, learning that some people would never see past the chair. She said it simply. No theater. Just the plain truth of it. Not cruel people, she said. Most people aren't cruel. Just, it becomes the first thing. The defining thing. You walk into a room and you're the wheelchair, not the person in the wheelchair. The wheelchair, she looked at him. You don't do that, she said. He met her eyes. I know, she said. I noticed. They sat with that for a moment. Then she said, quietly, it happened on a Tuesday. He waited, October 2017. I was driving home from my sister's house. Route 9, just past the Birch Creek intersection. He went very still. The other driver ran the light, going about 50. Road was wet, she said it factually. The way a person talks about something they have talked over so many times in their own mind that the raw edges have worn smooth. I woke up in the hospital 2 days later. She looked at her hands. They told me what had happened to my spine. I asked them to be direct. They were. Wade did not move. I was 28, she said. Marcus and I had been married 14 months. We had just started talking about buying a house. A pause. The driver. Carter Caulfield, she said the name without drama. Something in the room changed when she said it. The air got heavier. I didn't know who he was at first. I didn't know the family. I just knew what the police report said. Intoxication, failure to stop, and I knew my spine. She folded her hands on the table. A lawyer came to see me in the hospital. Not the Caulfield's lawyer, a different one. Said he was independent. Said he could help me navigate the process. Said the Caulfields were a prominent family in the county and that going to court would be long and expensive. She paused. He wasn't wrong about that. What did he offer? Wade said. She told him the number. A settlement, an agreement. A signature. The agreement had two main terms. The first, the Caulfield family would pay her medical costs in a lump sum. The second, she would not pursue further legal action. Would not speak publicly about the accident or the family's involvement. Marcus was still there then, she said. Just barely. We needed the money. The medical bills were... She shook her head slightly, and I was tired. So tired. I'd been in that hospital for 6 weeks. I was just starting to understand what my life was going to look like. I didn't have the energy to fight. So you signed, Wade said. I signed. She looked at the table. I have never, in 7 years, said Bryce Caulfield's name in connection with that accident. Not publicly. Not to anyone outside of this conversation. She looked at Wade when he came to my door in July. When he smiled at me and told me about investment and jobs and the future of Harlan Falls, she stopped. Wade looked at her. Her face was steady, but her hands, he noticed, had tightened slightly. Barely visible, the only sign. He knew who I was, she said. He came to my door and he knew exactly who I was, and he smiled. The kitchen was very quiet. Wade thought about Caulfield in his camel coat. Those boys can get rowdy sometimes. He thought about a 28-year-old woman in a hospital bed, tired, signing a paper because she didn't have anything left to fight with. He thought about what Denton had said, records that should exist, that I cannot find where they should be. He thought about the kick, the wheel, the calculation behind Noelle's eyes. There's something else, he said. She looked at him. Denton told me something Friday. He's been looking into the accident records. He said it carefully. The original incident report from that night. He says it's gone. Replaced with a shorter version. She was very still. He was the responding officer, Wade said, that night. Been carrying the feeling for 7 years that something wasn't right about how that case was handled. He didn't know what. He's starting to figure it out. She looked at him for a long time. He was there that night, she said slowly. Yes, I never knew who responded. I was unconscious. He wrote the full report. Someone replaced it. The weight of that settled over the table. She sat with it, working through it. Wade waited. If the original report still exists somewhere, she said, Denton thinks it might. He's looking, if it does. And if it shows what I think it might show. She stopped. If Wade, I signed a settlement. Denton knows someone who does civil law in Lexington. We talked briefly. There's evidence of suppression. If Caulfield's side withheld material information when the settlement was negotiated, he let that sit there. She understood law well enough. He could see her working through it. It could void the agreement, she said. It could. Another silence, longer this time. Outside, the wind had picked up. A branch tapped against the kitchen window. I have lived 7 years, she said quietly. Inside what they decided that settlement was worth. Her voice was steady. But under it, under the steadiness, was something else. Not anger exactly. Something older and heavier than anger. The specific weight of a person who has been told, by a signature on a piece of paper, what their injury was worth. What their walking was worth. What 14 months of marriage before the accident was worth. What all the things she would not do again were worth. A number. Agreed upon. Signed if there's a chance, she said. There might be, Wade said. It's not certain. Denton's still looking. But I wanted you to know. She looked at him. Why, she said. For the second time in a week. The same question. The real one. He thought about the honest answer again. Found it in the same place because it's yours, he said. Whatever happened that night. Whatever they decided to do with the paperwork. It's your story. You deserve to know what's in it. She looked at him for a long time. Then she looked down at the table. At her hands. At the half-finished red cardinal on the side table. When she looked back up, her eyes were bright. Not crying. Just the brightness of someone who has been holding something heavy for a long time and has just been offered for the first time the possibility of setting it down. Monday morning, the noise complaint arrived at the garage, official letterhead. Harlan County Code Enforcement. Complaint filed by a third party, name withheld, alleging excessive noise violations. Citing county ordinance on commercial operations effective immediately. No mechanical operations before 8 a.m. No operations after 5:30 p.m. No weekend operations. Wade read it twice. He set it down on the workbench. He thought about the practical arithmetic of it. He started at 6. He often worked until 7 or 7:30 in the evenings. Saturdays were his second buzziest day. With these restrictions, he would lose roughly 30% of his weekly work hours. In a one-man operation on a tight margin, 30% was serious. Thought about who had filed the complaint. The name was withheld. But names don't need to be on paper to be known. He was thinking about this when his phone rang. "Denton, you get a letter this morning?" "Just read it." Noel got one too. Different kind. Mandatory structural inspection order. Filed by Harlan County Building Safety Division. Anonymous complaint about foundation concerns. Wade was quiet. "She's required to hire a licensed structural engineer for a full assessment," Denton said, "within 30 days. He faces a temporary occupancy notice." "How much does that cost?" "Around $3,000. Maybe more," Wade set his jaw. "He's moving on both of us at once," he said. "Yes, he's got someone inside the county offices." "Has to," Denton said. "These filings, they move fast. Usually takes weeks." "These came through in 48 hours. Another silence. Denton, Wade said. "The report." "Are you close?" A pause. "I've been talking to the records clerk. The woman who was working the filing system in 2017. She's retired now. Leaves over in Cumberland. And she remembers the file. She remembers it because she noted, at the time, that the report she filed on the Monday after the accident was longer than the one that appeared in the official record a week later. She assumed she'd made an error, but she didn't make an error." "No," Denton said. "She didn't." Wood stood in the garage, the letter on the workbench, the morning light coming in through the open bay. "Keep going," he said. "I am." He went to Noelle at noon. She already knew about her letter. She was at her kitchen table with it in front of her when he knocked, reading it with the focused expression of someone solving a problem. $3,000, she said, when he sat down. "I know. I don't have $3,000. I know." She looked at him. "I'm not taking money from you, Wade. I know that too." He said it before she finished. "That's not what I'm offering." "Then what?" "I know a structural engineer out of Moorhead. Guy named Brewster Falk. I did some work for his brother years back. He owes me. He'll do the inspection. Legitimately. Full licensed assessment. Every form properly filed. But he won't charge you." She looked at him. "I'm calling in a favor," he said. "Not giving you money." "There's a difference." A pause. "Brewster's good," Wade said. "If there's a real structural issue, he'll find it and tell you straight. If there isn't, and there isn't, that house has a solid foundation. He'll document that clearly enough that the county can't use it as leverage." She was quiet for a moment, then, "Why does he owe you?" "His brother had a truck that needed a transmission rebuild. No money. I did it anyway. Told him to pay it forward someday." A pause. "That was 2 years ago," she said. "Brewster's a patient man." She almost smiled, then she looked at the letter again. "He's hitting both of us," she said, "at the same time. To stretch us thin, yes. See, we don't have time to focus on him." "Yes." She folded the letter carefully. "Set it aside. What do we do about the rezoning?" "I've been thinking about that," he said. "There's a reporter at the Harlan Falls Gazette. Woman named Iris Maddox. She's been here 15 years. Knows everybody. Knows the county. She's written about Caulfield's other projects before. Is she willing to look at this?" "I haven't asked yet." I wanted to talk to you first." Noelle looked at him. "Because it's my story," she said. "Because it's your story," he confirmed. She looked at the folded letter. At the cardinal on the side table, finished now, sitting in its red completeness. "Talk to her," Noelle said. Iris Maddox had been a reporter for 20 years. The first 5 in Lexington. The last 15 at the Harlan Falls Gazette, which she had no intention of leaving because she had no interest in the kind of journalism that required her to live somewhere she didn't want to be. She was 40 years old, direct in the way of a person who had spent 2 decades asking people questions they didn't want to answer. And she had a memory for county politics that was, in Wade's experience, better than any database. He met her at the Gazette office on Tuesday afternoon. He laid it out. Caulfield's property purchases, the timeline, the simultaneous code complaints, the rezoning hearing. She listened, took notes in a small spiral notebook with a pen she clicked compulsively. "I know about the Harrison Street project," she said. "I've been watching it. But the complaints, the timing on those is interesting." 48 hours, Wade said. Both filings, she underlined something. He told her about Noelle's settlement. Not the full story, not Route 9. "Just enough. She signed a confidentiality agreement as part of the settlement," he said. "So I have to be careful what I say. But the connection exists. Between Caulfield and the accident. Between the accident and why Noelle Garrett is on that street and why she's a target." Iris looked at him. "Is she willing to talk to me?" "Not yet. Not until we know more about the settlement's legal standing." "Okay," she wrote something. What about the council? For the rezoning hearing, has he made direct contact with the members? I believe so. I can't prove it yet, she nodded. I can work on that angle independently. Campaign finance records, meeting logs, that kind of thing. Give me a week. Wade looked at her. You're taking this seriously. I take county corruption seriously, she said without inflection. I always have. Most people who do this job in a small town have two choices. You either look away or you don't. She clicked her pen. I don't. She called him Thursday evening. He could tell from her voice before she said anything. The story's not running, she said. He was at the garage. He set down his wrench. What happened? My editor called me in this afternoon. He got a call. He didn't say from who. He said the story needs more sourcing, that we can't run allegations without documentation, which she stopped. Which isn't wrong, exactly, but the timing of his concern is interesting. Given that this morning he was fine with what I had, he got a call from Caulfield. He got a call from someone. I can't prove who. Wade looked at the wall of the garage. There's something else, Iris said, and I want you to know this because you need to know, not because it's good news. Tell me. The settlement agreement Noelle signed. I did some research this afternoon. General research, not specific to her case, just to understand the standard terms. If she speaks publicly about the Caulfield family's involvement in the accident, before any legal determination about the settlement's validity, she stopped. He can sue her for breach, Wade said, yes. And even a lawsuit she would eventually win would cost money she doesn't have. Time she doesn't have, energy she doesn't have. Wade was quiet. He built it both ways, Iris said. Settlement was leverage from the beginning. Pay her enough to take away her options. Not so much that she'd ever be truly independent. The garage was quiet. The evening was settling in. The temperature had dropped another few degrees. Iris, he said, Denton finds what he's looking for. The original report. The suppression. What does that change? Suppressed evidence during settlement negotiations, she said. In Kentucky civil law, yes. It creates grounds to void the agreement. It also becomes a story that's bigger than the Harlan Falls Gazette. That's a story I could place with the Louisville Courier-Journal. And the Courier-Journal is outside the reach of anyone in this county. A silence. How close is Denton? She asked. He talked to the records clerk. She remembers the original report. Her memory is not the same as having the document. He knows that. Tell him to keep looking, Iris said. And tell him to be careful who he tells. She paused. Wade, this is real. What Caulfield did to that woman 7 years ago, and what he's trying to do now, it's real. I'm not walking away from it. I just need to come at it from an angle he can't kill. Okay, he said. Keep Noelle steady, she said, and watch your back. She was quiet for a long time. Then, so he can kill the story, this time, and the settlement. If I talk anyway, he sues you. She looked at the table. At the folded structural inspection letter still sitting there. At the cardinal on the shelf, he built a cage, she said, not bitterly, just accurately. He built it 7 years ago, and he's been adding to it ever since. Wade looked at her. The cage has his door, he said. Denton's looking for the key. She held that. How long, she said. I don't know. She nodded, slowly. Then she picked up her knitting. Not because she wasn't listening. Because her hands needed to be doing something while she thought. He understood that about her now. Friday morning was cold and gray, the kind of cold that meant November was close. The mountains were visible across the valley, stripped of most of their color now. The sky was the flat white of a day that couldn't decide whether to snow. Wade was at the garage at 6:15. He had the noise restriction. He wasn't operating. He was just there, at the workbench, doing paperwork which he hated, which he was therefore getting done. At 6:40, he looked up from the workbench. Something made him look. Instinct, the old reflexes, still operational. He looked through the open garage door at Harrison Street. He saw Noelle. She was on her front ramp. She had pushed forward a few feet down the slope and stopped. She was not moving. He watched for 2 seconds. 3. She should have kept moving. She was just going out. The morning routine, he'd seen it before. She liked to get the paper from the box at the end of her walk before she settled in to work. But she had stopped, and she was very still. He was across the street in 45 seconds. Her right rear tire was flat, not going down, slowly flat. Flat, completely deflated. She was sitting in the chair with her hands on the push rims, not pushing. Not because she couldn't manage a flat. She had a portable pump. She knew how. She wasn't pushing because the tire was not just flat. He crouched down and looked. There was a small puncture. Clean. The kind that comes from a nail or a thin metal implement pushed in deliberately. Not the kind that comes from rolling over something on the street. He looked at the puncture. Looked up at Noelle. She had been out here at 6:40 a.m. which meant whoever did this had been on her property sometime in the night. The air temperature was 29 degrees. He thought about her sitting here in 29-degree air, unable to move, not calling anyone. Because she had learned not to. Because 7 years of being told in various ways she was on her own had made not calling the automatic response. He looked at her face. She was not crying. But her eyes were wet. Not from the cold. He had seen her carry things. He had watched her carry things all week. The letter, the settlement, the memory of Route 9. The 7 years of modifications and adaptations. And people who looked at the chair before they looked at her. She had carried all of it without breaking. Somehow this small flat tire on a cold Friday morning was the thing that brought the tears to the surface. Maybe because it was so small. Maybe because it was so deliberate. Maybe because it was just one more thing after all the other things. He said nothing about the tears. "Come on," he said quietly. "Let's get you back inside." He helped her back up the ramp, not taking over, just present, available if she needed the assist. She didn't need it. But she let him be there. He brought the chair inside, looked at the tire more carefully under the kitchen light. "I'll have it fixed in 20 minutes, he said. She sat at the table, wrapped her hands around the coffee mug she'd made before she went out. He worked at the kitchen table, spread out on a drop cloth he'd brought from the garage. New tube. Careful patch on the outer tire for good measure. She watched him work. He did not look up. He just worked. After a few minutes, she said, "He's trying to scare me. Yes. Make me feel unsafe in my own house." "Yes." Another silence. "Is it working?" he said, not unkindly. She thought about it honestly. "A little," she said. "This morning, yes." "A little," he nodded. "That's fair," he said. "You're allowed to be scared. That doesn't mean you have to act scared." She looked at him. He reseated the tire on the rim, inflated it to spec. He tested the wheels smooth. He set it on the floor and looked at it, then looked at her. "Noelle," he said. She met his eyes. "He's doing this because it's working," Wade said. "The noise complaint, the structural order. This," he gestured at the tire. "This is what a man does when he's starting to feel like his plan needs help." She was quiet. "Denton is close," Wade said. "Iris hasn't walked away. And the hearing is still 3.5 weeks out." She looked at the wheel, at her hands, at the window where the gray Friday morning was beginning to lighten slightly. "Okay," she said, Sybil. The same words she had said Tuesday morning. Same words she had said about Route 9. Okay, it was Wade had come to understand, not a word of resignation for Noelle Garrett, it was a word of decision. He stayed until she was set up and working. Laptop open. Coffee fresh. "Wheel true." At the door, she said, "Wade." He turned. She looked at him for a moment. "Thank you," she said. "I mean, not just for the tire. For this week." He looked at her. "You said you didn't stand aside when it mattered," she said. "I just want you to know it matters." He held that. "I'll come by tonight." Said, "Let you know what I hear from Denton." She nodded. He walked back across Harrison Street. The morning had gotten a little lighter. Still gray, but lighter. He went back to the garage, and in his chest, in the place where things settle when they find where they belong, something had shifted. He wasn't sure yet exactly what it was. He only knew it was there, and that it had been a long time since it was. The call came on a Sunday. Wade was sitting at his kitchen table with his second cup of coffee when his phone rang. Derek had called that morning, right on schedule. They'd talked for 22 minutes about the civil engineering group project, about the dining hall chili, about whether Wade needed anything sent from Lexington. Wade had said no. Derek said, "Different, Dad." Named Dad. Wade had said, "Do I?" Good, different. Wade had not known what to say to that, so he said, "Call me next Sunday." That conversation was still sitting warm in Wade's chest when Denton called at 11:15. "I found it," Denton said. Wade set down his cup. "Where?" "The retired clerk, Edna Bascom, lives in Cumberland. I went to see her in person second time." A pause. She'd kept a copy. Wade was very still. "She made a photocopy of the original report before she filed it," Denton said. "Standard practice for her. She did it with complex cases, kept her own records. She said it was something her supervisor taught her 20 years ago. If a file ever goes missing, you want to be the person who has a copy." And she kept it in a manila folder in a filing cabinet in her spare bedroom. 11 years of practice. She had maybe 40 files in there. She remembered mine because her words, "It was a bad accident and the man responsible had a name I recognized." Wade looked out the kitchen window. Harrison Street, the house with the ramp. Still in Sunday quiet. "What does the original say?" he said. Denton told him the original incident report from the night of October 14, 2017 was 4 pages. The version in the official county record was 1.5. The differences were not small. The original documented Carter Caulfield's blood alcohol content at the time of the accident. 0.17. The legal limit in Kentucky was 0.08. 0.17 was more than twice that. The official record noted only that the driver was impaired. No number, no measurement. Impaired, the original documented a witness, a woman named Gloria Fenwick, who had been parked at the gas station on the corner of Route 9 and Birch Creek Road, who had watched Carter Caulfield pull out of the parking lot across the street, who had watched him nearly hit a parked car before he even reached the intersection, who had gotten out of her own car and shouted at him to stop. He had not stopped. 40 seconds later, he had run the red light at 52 miles per hour. Gloria Fenwick had given Denton her full name, her phone number, her description of what she saw. 4 lines of documentation, clear and specific. The official record contained no mention of a witness. The original documented that Denton had attempted to contact the Caulfield family's attorney, a man named Raymond Solis, on the morning of October 15th, the day after the accident, to inform him that a witness had been identified and would need to be interviewed. Raymond Solis had told Denton that he would handle the follow-up interviews personally. The official record contained no mention of a witness interview, no follow-up notation, no contact with Gloria Fenwick, because there had been no contact with Gloria Fenwick. She had never been called, never interviewed, never included. She had simply been removed from the record, from the case. From the settlement, Wade listened to all of it. When Denton finished, the kitchen was very quiet. Solis, Wade said. He's still practicing? Retired. Florida, but the bar record is public. He represented Bryce Caulfield's business interests for 14 years. Not a distant connection. When the settlement was negotiated, Solis was the Caulfield family's representative, Denton said. He knew about Gloria Fenwick because I told him about Gloria Fenwick. He chose not to disclose her to Noel's side. He chose not to include her in the record. Wade looked at the table. Denton, he said, you've been carrying this for 7 years, a silence. Then Denton said quietly, I wrote that report. I wrote it right. I included everything I was supposed to include. And then I watched a version of it appear in the record that I didn't recognize. And I thought, he stopped. Started again. I thought I'd made errors. That maybe I'd misremembered what I wrote. I was a younger officer. I didn't have the standing to push back. And the case was closed. The settlement was signed. What was I going to do? He said it like a question he had asked himself many times. You couldn't have known, Wade said. I should have pushed harder, maybe. But you're pushing now. Another silence. I'm pushing now. Denton said. Wade called Iris Maddox at 11:45. She answered on the second ring. He told her what Denton had found. She was quiet for 4 full seconds, which, for Iris, silence. Then, does Denton have the physical copy? In his hands, and Gloria Fenwick. Is she reachable? Denton has her number. Current address in Bowling Green. She's willing to talk. She's been waiting to talk for 7 years, Wade said. Nobody ever called her. Another silence. This isn't the Gazette, Iris said. This is the Courier-Journal. That's what I was thinking. I have a contact there. Senior reporter. She covers state-level corruption. She's been looking for a county-level case that demonstrates the pattern. Wade thought about Caulfield. The camel coat, the practiced smile. Those boys can get rowdy sometimes. Tell her it's a pattern, he said. Harrison Street is the current play, but the accident is the root, and the root goes back to a family that has been arranging outcomes in this county for a long time. Yes, Iris said. That's exactly what I'll tell her. She paused. Wade. The rezoning hearing is in 18 days, I know. If we're going to do this, if this story is going to be ready in time to matter, we need to move. Then move, he said. He went to her that afternoon. She was at her work table when he knocked. The cardinal was finished. It sat on the shelf above her yarn, small and red and exactly right. She was starting something new, something blue. She read his face when she opened the door. Come in, she said. Tell me. He sat at the kitchen table. He told her everything, the 4-page report, the 1.5-page official version, the blood alcohol number, Gloria Fenwick, the gas station corner, Raymond Solis, the witness who had never been called. Told it plainly, in order. Without commentary, she listened without moving. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. The afternoon light came through the kitchen window at a low angle. November light. Thin and honest. 0.17, she said. Yes. He was 0.17. Yes. She looked at her hands on the table. I signed that settlement not knowing there was a witness, she said. Not knowing what the blood alcohol was. Not knowing that the report had been changed, yes. They made me sign it not knowing. The word they carried weight. Solace. The family. The machinery that moved around people Carter Caulfield to manage outcomes. Yes, Wade said. She sat with that. He waited. He had learned, in the past week and a half, that Noelle Garrett processed things in a specific way. She didn't rush. She didn't react before she had thought. She took what she was given, turned it over, looked at every side of it. It was the quality he had come to think, someone who had spent 7 years making consequential decisions alone. You learn not to act before you're ready. Because when you're alone, you have to live with what you decide. What does this mean? She said finally. Legally, Iris is connecting with a lawyer at the Courier-Journal. There may also be a civil attorney in Lexington who will look at it. Suppressed evidence during settlement negotiations in Kentucky that can void the agreement. It doesn't guarantee anything, but opens the door to sue again, with a witness, with the real blood alcohol number. With a lawyer who knows what they're doing. She looked at the window. 7 years ago, she said, signed that paper because I was tired and scared and alone, and Marcus was halfway out the door already. I signed it because the lawyer they sent told me it was the best I would get, and I believed him. She paused. She stopped. Started again. There has always been a part of me that felt like I had done something wrong by signing, like I had given something up that wasn't mine to give. She looked at Wade. Like I had let them win, she said, and that by signing, I had helped them do it. He held her gaze. You were 28 years old, he said. You were 6 weeks out of the hospital. You had no money and no support. You made the only decision you could make with what you had. She was quiet. They took advantage of what you had, he said. It's not the same as you letting them win. That's them cheating. She looked at him for a long moment. Something in her face shifted, not dramatically. The same small shift he had seen before. A door opening further. What do you need from me? She said. Iris wants to know if you're willing to talk to the Journal reporter, on the record, eventually. Not yet, not until we know where the settlement stands legally. But in principle, she was quiet. If I talk publicly, he may try to enforce the settlement. The legal opinion is that he can't. Not if the agreement was obtained through suppressed evidence. But may try and can't win are two different things in terms of what it cost you. Time, stress, possibly money. She absorbed this. What does Iris think the story does? Noelle said. If it runs. If the Courier-Journal publishes it before the hearing. What actually happens? Caulfield has 3 votes on the Planning Commission. 2 of those men are up for re-election in spring. State-level story about a developer with a history of suppressing evidence and using political connections to push residents out of their homes. He let her finish the calculation herself. She did. They back away, she said. That's the hope. But it's not certain. Nothing about this is certain, Wade said. I won't tell you it is. She appreciated that. He could see it. She looked at the cardinal on the shelf. Tell Iris yes, she said. In principle, yes. When the time is right, she looked at him, and Wade, yeah, thank you for coming to me first. Before telling Iris yes, before deciding anything, he met her eyes. It's your story, he said. It was always going to be your decision. The 18 days moved faster than they should have. Iris and her contact at the Courier-Journal, a reporter named Sandra Greer, who had covered Kentucky state government for 16 years, worked the story from both ends. Sandra called Gloria Fenwick in Bowling Green. Gloria Fenwick was 63 years old. She had been waiting, as Wade told Iris, for someone to call. She had thought about that night many times over 7 years. She had thought about the woman in the other car. She had never known her name. Sandra told her Noelle's name. Gloria was quiet for a moment, then she said, "Is she all right?" Sandra told her what had happened. Gloria said, "I'll tell you everything I remember. I've been remembering it since 2017. She told Sandra everything. The parking lot, the near miss with the parked car, the shouting, the intersection, the sound. She had sat in her car for 20 minutes after the accident, shaking, waiting for someone to take her statement. Denton had taken it. She had given him her phone number. Nobody had ever called. Denton provided a notarized copy of Edna Bascom's original report. A civil attorney in Lexington, a woman named Patricia Wendell, who had been recommended by Iris and who had taken one look at the file and agreed to consult for free. Reviewed the document alongside the official record. She called Wade on a Thursday. The discrepancies are significant, she said. Omission of blood alcohol measurement. Omission of witness testimony. These are material facts. Under Kentucky civil procedure, a settlement obtained without disclosure of material facts known to the opposing party can be challenged. Can she win that challenge? Wade said, I can't promise outcomes. But she has a strong case. Stronger than most I've seen. She paused. She should also know that what Salas did, if it can be demonstrated that he knowingly withheld this, has professional implications for him, even in retirement. Bar complaints don't have statutes of limitations, Wade told Noelle that evening. She sat with it for a while, then she said, "What was her name?" "The witness, Gloria Fenwick. Is she okay? Has this been hard for her?" Wade looked at her. This was the thing about Noelle Garrett, in the middle of everything that had been done to her. In the middle of 7 years of carrying it. Her first question about the woman who had tried to stop Carter Caulfield from getting in that car was whether Gloria was okay. "She's okay," he said. "She wants to help." Noelle nodded. "Tell her thank you," she said, "for trying to stop him, even though it didn't work. Tell her I know she tried." The night before the hearing, Wade couldn't sleep. He was in the garage at 11 p.m., not working. Just sitting on the bench, in the particular quiet of a space that has absorbed years of work. He thought about the 22 years, about the things he had been asked to do and had done, about the particular moral architecture of his profession, the framework of rules and codes and chains of command that structured everything, that made the hard decisions manageable because they were made inside a structure. He had left that structure 4 years ago. He had come back to Harlan Falls because it was small and because it was quiet and because he thought maybe, after 22 years, he had earned quiet. He had been right about the small. He had been right about the quiet. But he understood now that quiet was not the same as still. A quiet life lived on a street with other people. It was not a life without things that mattered. It was not a life without moments where you had to decide what you were. Spent 2 weeks watching a woman who had every reason to turn inward, choose instead to be exactly who she was. Honest, careful, generous with the people she trusted, uninterested in performing suffering, uninterested in performing strength, just herself, inside whatever life had given her. He thought about Lynette. He thought about what she would say if she could see this. He knew what she would say. She would say, "It's about time, Wade Callum," and she would laugh. Too loud for the room. Not caring at all. Sat in the garage until midnight. Then he locked up, walked across the street. Noelle's light was still on. He stood at the edge of his driveway for a moment. Then he walked over. Knocked softly, she answered. She was still dressed, laptop open on the table, half-finished cup of tea beside it. "Couldn't sleep either," she said. No, she moved back from the door. He came in. They sat at the kitchen table. No particular agenda. No planning left to do. It was done. The story was done. Sandra Greer had confirmed it would run in the morning edition of the Louisville Courier-Journal. The hearing was at 10 a.m. What would happen would happen. "Are you scared?" he said. She thought about it. "Not of the hearing," she said. "Of what comes after, maybe. The legal process. The uncertainty." She paused. 7 years ago, I thought my life was over. Everything I had planned. Everything I thought I was going to be over." She looked at the table, and then I had to figure out what life actually was. Without the plans, without the version I'd imagined, what I found was, it was smaller than what I'd imagined. But it was real. This house, this street, the work I do, the things I make with my hands. She paused. "Real is worth more than I used to think." He looked at her. "What I'm scared of," she said quietly, "is wanting more than that, and then losing it." He understood what she was saying. Not about the hearing. He reached across the table. Put his hand over hers. She looked at his hand. Then at him. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. She held his gaze. "You don't know that. I know it," he said. She looked at him for a long moment, then she turned her hand over under his, held it. They sat like that until after 1 in the morning, not saying much, not needing to. Two people on the eve of something, holding on. The Harlan County Planning Commission met in the old municipal building on Courthouse Square. It had been built in 1931. The meeting room had tall windows and wooden floors that creaked and plaster walls that had absorbed decades of arguments. Smelled like radiator heat and old paper. It seated about 80 people. By 9:45 there were over 100. Word had moved through Harlan Falls the way word moves in small towns. Not through announcements, not through social media, but through the network of people who knew what was happening. Marvella was there. Sitting in the third row, straight-backed, hands folded. She had closed the diner for the morning. In 31 years, she had never closed the diner on a weekday morning. Hector Briggs was there, 82 years old. His family had owned their property on Harrison Street since 1959. He had driven himself. There were people Wade didn't recognize. People from other parts of town. People who had heard, from someone who heard from someone, that something was happening on Harrison Street. The 3 planning commission members sat at the front table. Edward Marsh in the center. Dale Coffey to his left. Roy Winters to his right. Two of the three had publicly signaled support for the rezoning proposal, Coffey and Winters. Both up for re-election in spring, the morning's Louisville Courier-Journal sat on every seat in the room. Someone had placed them there. Wade didn't know who. Suspected Iris, the headline on page 3. Developer's pattern of pressure. Suppressed evidence, settled silence. And one Kentucky town's fight to stay Sandra Greer's byline. 14 paragraphs. Gloria Fenwick's name. The blood alcohol number. The missing witness. The 14-month property acquisition timeline. The simultaneous code complaints filed within 48 hours. Not everything. Not the full legal case. But enough to change the air in a room. Bryce Caulfield arrived at 9:50. He came with 2 lawyers and his brother, Mayor Gerald Caulfield. If he saw the newspapers on the seats, Wade watched his face from across the room. Caulfield was a controlled man. That control did not entirely hold in the 2 seconds after he saw the papers. Then it came back. Professional. He sat in the front row, spoke quietly to his lawyers. One of the lawyers, the younger one, pulled out his phone and made a call. Stepped outside. Wade stood near the back wall. Denton was beside him. Iris was in the far corner with her notebook. At 9:58, Noelle came in. She did not come in quietly, not loudly either. But there is a way that someone enters a room when they have decided to be fully present in it, when they are not diminishing themselves to fit, when they are taking up exactly the space they are owed. That was how she came in. She rolled past the rows. People moved without being asked. She found her position near the front, to the right of the center aisle. She was wearing a dark blue sweater, one she'd made herself, Wade realized. The precise blue of the project she'd been starting at her work table. She had finished it for today. She did not look at Caulfield. She looked at the front of the room. 3 commissioners, at the windows. At the room she was present. Fully, quietly present. The hearing opened at 10. Commissioner Marsh ran through the procedural language. Rezoning proposal. Harrison Street corridor. Mixed-use commercial development classification. Caulfield's lawyer presented the proposal. Thorough, professional, economic development, tax revenue, jobs. The language of inevitability. The sense that this was simply what was going to happen, and the only question was how gracefully Harlan Falls would accept it. Commissioner Coffey nodded through most of it. Commissioner Winters took notes. Commissioner Marsh listened without expression. Then the floor opened for public comment. Hector Briggs spoke first. He was 82, and his voice shook slightly, but only from age. His words did not shake. He said his grandfather had bought the property on Harrison Street in 1959, that his father had worked it, that he had worked it, that 3 generations of his family had paid taxes on it, maintained it, been part of this town through every change it had gone through. He said, "This town doesn't need to be saved by someone from Lexington. It needs to be listened to by its own government." People in the room made sounds of agreement. Others spoke. A woman who ran a daycare 2 blocks from Harrison. A retired teacher who lived on Birch. A man who had used Wade's garage and said simply that it was the most honest business he'd dealt with in 20 years of living here. And then Commissioner Coffey leaned toward his microphone and said, "I want to address the article that appeared in this morning's Louisville paper." Caulfield's lawyer was on his feet immediately. "Commissioner, with respect, the article is unverified and irrelevant to the matter at hand. It's relevant to my vote," Coffey said. The room went quiet. Dale Coffey was not a man who made statements like that lightly. He was 61. He had been on the commission for 9 years. He had voted with the mayor's office on almost everything. He looked at the papers in his hands. "I received a phone call this morning," he said, "from the Caulfield family's counsel, asking me to consider the broader economic picture." He set the papers down. "I've been on this commission 9 years. I voted with the development proposals most of the time, because I believed they were good for this town." He paused. "I'm not going to vote for this one. Not today. Not with what's in this paper, and not with what I've been hearing from people on Harrison Street for the past month." The room erupted, not in celebration. In the charged noise of a room where something has shifted and people aren't sure yet what it means. Commissioner Winters was very still. Caulfield was speaking quietly and rapidly to his lawyer. And then Noelle moved. She did not ask permission. She rolled to the front of the room. To the public comment microphone. The room quieted. Caulfield looked at her. For the first time since this had started, since the diner, since July, since 7 years ago on Route 9, he looked uncertain. She looked at the 3 commissioners. Not at him. She spoke without notes. "My name is Noelle Garrett," she said. I've lived on Harrison Street for 7 years. I want to say 3 things. Her voice was steady, clear, not performing calm, just calm. The first is that this street is my home. Not a development opportunity, not a corridor. My home. I chose it. I modified it with my own work and my own money. I have been a neighbor to the people on this street in every way I knew how to be. That should count for something. She paused. The second is that I know Bryce Caulfield's family. Not from business. From a night 7 years ago on Route 9, when a member of his family made a choice that ended my ability to walk. And when the legal process that followed that night was handled in a way that made sure I never had all the information I was owed, the room was very quiet. Caulfield's lawyer started to stand. Marsh waved him down without looking at him. I'm not here to try that case today, Noel said. That's for another time. But I am here to say that this rezoning proposal is not separate from that history. It is continuous with it. It is one more arrangement made by people with power, at the expense of people without it, on the assumption that those people will be too tired or too afraid to push back. She looked at the commissioners. The third thing I want to say is this. She paused. I'm not tired, and I'm not afraid. She turned her chair and went back to her place. The room was silent for 3 full seconds, then it wasn't. The vote was 3-2 against the rezoning proposal. Winners had changed. He did not explain himself. He simply voted no. Caulfield sat in the front row and did not move for a long moment after the vote was recorded. His lawyer put a hand on his arm and said something. Caulfield stood, straightened his coat, walked out. He did not look at Wade. He did not look at Noel. He walked out through the tall wooden doors of the 1931 municipal building and into the November morning. Wade watched him go. He felt no particular triumph. Just the quiet satisfaction of a thing done right. Denton was beside him. It's not over, Denton said quietly. The legal case, the settlement, that's a longer road. I know, Wade said. But today was today. Yeah, Wade said. Today was today. The days after the hearing were quieter, not resolved, not finished, but quieter. Patricia Wendell, the civil attorney in Lexington, formally agreed to take Noel's case on contingency. She filed the initial documentation to challenge the 2017 settlement agreement on grounds of material misrepresentation. It would take time. These things take time. Patricia had been direct about that. I can't promise you a timeline. I can't promise you an outcome. What I can tell you is that you have a strong case and a good witness and documentation that most people in your situation never get, Noel had said. That's enough for now. Brewster Falk filed his structural assessment report with Harlan County Building Safety Division on a Wednesday afternoon, 4 pages. Every measurement documented, every load-bearing element assessed. His conclusion in plain language: the foundation was sound, no structural concerns. No occupancy risk. The mandatory inspection order was formally closed 2 days later. Brewster called Wade when it was done. Tell her the house is solid, he said. Wade told her. She already knew. But it was good to have it in writing. Raymond Salas, the retired attorney in Florida, received a formal inquiry from the Kentucky Bar Association within 2 weeks of the Courier-Journal story running. He did not respond publicly. His former client, Bryce Caulfield, withdrew from 2 planned development projects in eastern Kentucky in the month following the hearing. His brother, Mayor Gerald Caulfield, announced in late November that he would not seek re-election. He cited personal reasons. 3 men from the diner were identified in the Courier-Journal story. Not by name. But the property management company that owned their truck was named. The company's work history with Caulfield's developments was documented. 2 weeks after the hearing, company's operating license in Harlan County was reviewed. Denton had filed the request. He didn't say much about it. He just said, some things take a little longer to catch up. Denton kept his job. The incoming mayor, elected in the spring, a woman named Harriet Voss, who had run the county library for 12 years, named him the permanent sheriff, not interim. It was the first time in 8 years the position had not been subject to the mayor's family's preferences. Stopped by the garage in early December. Sat on the bench. Let Wade keep working, you know, Denton said. I've been thinking about that report, the one I wrote. I've been thinking about why it bothered me so much for so long, even when I couldn't name what was wrong. Wade looked up. Because you knew what you wrote, Wade said. Because I knew what I wrote, Denton confirmed. And when the world told me a different version, I doubted myself instead of the world. Wade straightened up, wiped his hands. A lot of people do that, Wade said. Too many, Denton said. He stood up, shook Wade's hand. Good things happen when you don't do that, Denton said. Then he walked out, Marvella reopened the diner the morning after the hearing and made apple pie. She did not explain why she was making apple pie on a Tuesday instead of a Monday. She just made it. And when Wade came in that morning and sat at the counter, she set a slice in front of him without a word. He looked at it. "Don't read too much into pie," she said. He smiled. She turned back to the kitchen. Then, without turning around, "She's good people, Wade Callum. You know that, I know that," he said. "Good," she said. Then stopped sitting at the counter. He picked up his coffee and his pie. He moved to the corner table. It was the second week of November. The trees were bare now. Harrison Street looked different without the leaves, more exposed, the bones of the neighborhood visible in a way that felt honest rather than stark. Wade was at the garage on a Saturday morning. He was working on a 2003 Dodge Ram with a brake line that had been slowly failing since August. Real work. The kind that required attention. He heard the door. He rolled out from under the truck. Noelle was at the garage entrance. She was holding 2 cups from Marvella's. "She insisted," Noelle said. "Said you'd been working since 6 and needed coffee, and that she was tired of you pretending you didn't." He stood up, wiped his hands. She came in, looked around the garage with the attention of someone who had never been inside it properly. The tools laid out in their specific order. At the photographs on the back wall, Derek at about 12, holding a fish with an expression of pure satisfaction. Lynette at a picnic table somewhere, laughing at something off camera. She looked at Lynette's photograph for a moment. He watched her. She turned back to him, held out one of the cups. He took it. They stood in the garage in the November morning, warm inside. Cold outside. The sound of the town, such as it was going about its Saturday. "How's the case?" he said. "Patricia says it could be spring before the first hearing. Maybe longer. You okay with that?" "I'm okay with that." She held her cup in both hands. "I've been thinking about something." "What?" "That question you asked me at the beginning, whether I was scared. I said I was scared of wanting more and then losing it." He remembered. She looked at him. "I've been thinking that's the wrong way to think about it," she said. "That protecting yourself from loss by not wanting anything, that's not actually protection. That's just a different kind of loss." Slower, he looked at her. "I want things," she said simply. "I think that's okay. I think I'm allowed." He held her gaze. "You're allowed," said. She looked at him for a moment. Then she looked around the garage. She said, "For a man who claims to keep to himself, you have a lot of photographs up." He looked at the wall. "Some things are worth keeping visible," he said. She smiled. "Yeah," she said. "They are." Later that afternoon, he walked her back across Harrison Street. At the ramp to her front door, she stopped. "Wade, yeah, I'm making dinner tonight. Real dinner, not just something. If you want to come." He looked at her. "What time?" 6. "I'll be there," he said. She nodded. Went up the ramp. He stood at the edge of her walk for a moment, watching her go. The November light was that specific amber again, low and honest, making everything look like what it was. He walked back across the street, back to the garage, back to the Dodge Ram with its failing brake line, back to the work that was in front of him. He was at the bench for 10 minutes before he realized he was smiling. 6 o'clock came. He knocked on her door. She answered. The house smelled like something real, something cooked with care. The kind of smell that means a home. He stepped inside. "Smells good," he said. "It is good," she said. "Sit down." He sat at the kitchen table. The Cardinal watched from its shelf. Red and small and exactly right outside, Harrison Street was quiet, lit by the amber of the streetlights. His garage across the way, dark, done for the day. The 2 houses, the short distance between them. He thought about the morning 3 weeks ago when he had walked into Marvella's and seen her at the corner table. How he had seen her many times before. How they had lived on the same street for 4 years, and he had never said more than a nod. Thought about all the mornings that pass between people, all the nods, all the distances that never close. And then one morning something happens and the distance closes and you realize it was always smaller than you thought. That it was never as far as it seemed. Sometimes you are already standing next to the thing that matters. You just have to be the person who doesn't look away. Noelle set a plate of in front of him, sat down across the table. The light was warm. "Eat," she said. He did. Outside, Cardinal landed on the fence post at the edge of her yard. Red against the November gray, he saw it first. Then she did. Neither of them said anything. They didn't need to.